Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Den. I'm Jared the Greek, the cyber new type whose voice still sounds horrible because he was just at a convention all weekend doing panels and events, and this is what I sound like. So, of course, I'm recording my review right now instead of waiting a couple days. Why wouldn't I? But since it was a really good episode, I decided I had to talk about it now. So let's get started. Storyline wise, we of course began where we left off last time. This Suletta freaks out, as I predicted. And instead of Yule being more, kind of understanding of this, just decides for the whole rest of the episode to be like, I didn't mean that I had interest in you anyways. Yeah, it was just something that slipped out. You must have heard me wrong. And trying to get her and the whole rest of the school to not, believe that he actually did what he did, which was on the monitors. His brother and his dad are not happy. And that's what all Yule does in this whole episode, is just kind of just push people away and yell at people and feel less than because he got turned down. I'm sure there's going to be a follow-up to this at some point. We also found out he lost his Darabalde, which means, yes, we will be seeing Gil's Delanza again, which is good because that helps sell that model kit. Getting back to our actual main plot, we get to see school. Like, Suletta's in a class. We see just day-to-day stuff. She's kind of stressing out about homework. I mean, we're actually using the school. Wow! Oh my gosh, what a concept. You have this location, and now you're using it properly. Overall, Suletta is kind of a minor character in this episode because her main story involves learning that she has to have her own team. So you're supposed to get people from your house to be your support staff while you do mobile suit stuff. And of course, she doesn't really have a house because she's from Mercury and she's the only Mercurian student. So she starts going around trying to find people to be her support staff, and in the end struggles through the assignments because of pranks that have been played on her. The big standout of this episode, and the person who gets all the character development, is Choo Choo. I'm not even joking about that. This short loudmouth girl gets to get character development. She is the first side character, if you're not going to count Guel, who I consider more like a main, to actually get development. What? We see her dealing with the Spacians being jerks to the Earthians. We see them play a prank on her as well. And we see her, hot-tempered personality. We see her piloting a mobile suit. And we see her more or less being kind of maybe not the leader, but definitely the voice of the Earthian dorm, which is pretty cool. She also has some really great standout moments that would all be spoilers. Also, there's a goat in this episode. It's great. I love that goat. Then between that and Kukuru's Dewan's Island, man, Gundam goats. Let's keep that going, guys. Aesthetically, we get to see the Demi Trainer in action, finally. It only took them 4 episodes to get to the Demi Trainer. I'm kind of glad we get to finally see it do something. It's used to teach the kids how to deal with military tactics. Probably what it should be used for. So, cool, get to see the Demi Trainer in action, and that's kind of about it. There's no real battle sequences here other than the exercise the students are doing, and there's not any new major characters or anything else introduced, so aesthetically, very easy this time around. Character-wise, like I said, Choo Choo gets the main focus. We get to learn a little bit more about her family back on Earth, that she's more or less one of the more respected and commanding members of her dorm, that she's a fairly decent mobile suit pilot, and if not for the prank pulled on her, she would have probably been one of the highest scoring people on the assignment. In addition to that, you see how the other characters react to her. And we learn, of course, that Choo Choo is a nickname, because of course it is. And overall, I like that. I like this character kind of getting a little bit of focus. Beyond that, not a lot to talk about character-wise, because not a lot happened with the other characters. Overall, I really liked this episode. As you may have noticed in my review, it's almost entirely compliments, if not entirely compliments. I'll have to go back and rewatch the video, but either way, I'm really starting to sound like one of those reviewers who has their lips permanently attached to Sunrise's backside, and that doesn't come off right for me. I'm not usually I really liked this, there's no major flaws person, especially when it comes to anime, especially my old YouTube series, which pissed off everybody. But more importantly, I'm glad to see the show improving. I kept saying early on, I'm not a big fan of this, there's a lot of flaws, and now we're starting to see what the show could be. Well, I don't necessarily want an entire show built around learning how to pilot mobile suits or anything like that. If you did something along the lines of the Wing Commander Academy cartoon series from the 90s, where they were both students and they did training stuff and what have you, but then also were forced to be in battle because the Terran Confederation had lost so many soldiers, they had to put their cadets into service. And something like that could work. Granted, that show had an amazing voice talent cast and had pretty decent visuals and budget, considering the fact that it was, one of those, I think it was a syndicated cartoon, if I'm not mistaken. So it wasn't like part of a major network or anything like that. I remember watching it on USA Network. So, yeah. Also, it's a video game related animation, so that too. And yet, it was a very enjoyable show. And I think that if this takes some of those kinds of steps of showing the real combat stuff, which they do with the duels, and the training and education aspects of their life as students, you could do something really interesting with that. We'll see what happens. Otherwise, it's time for spoilers. Okay, so let's talk about a few things. One, we learn a lot about the Earthians in this. Not as much as I'd like to know, but we definitely find out that they are more or less considered second-class citizens. The people of Earth, like in many Gundam series, are treated pretty terribly and are seen as throwaway people. It isn't uncommon for Earth to be kind of a bad place, whether it is the pollution or just the damage that's been done to the planet. Series like G Gundam, After War Gundam X, Double O to some extent, and various parts of the Universal Century have shown Earth to be a pretty terrible place, and people have a much more comfortable life in space. And we're going into one of those kind of series versus the series where space is being constantly oppressed and treated poorly, and Earth is like paradise because they got rid of a lot of the problems that come with having an overly abundant population. So I do like that aspect of the show. I like seeing Choo Choo's family and friends and whoever else was on that screen, as we don't really hear their names or anything, cheering her on and talking about how we need you to be the best you can be. We see a news clip where a bunch of Earthian protesters are being taken out with gas grenade attacks and mobile suits to intimidate them. Well, Spacians, while I do appreciate this, I want to point out that in Battletech, the way they deal with riots is with machine guns and flamethrowers. Mech-mounted machine guns and flamethrowers, to be exact. So, brutality, sure, but you gassed people and arrested a few. If this is Battletech, they just wiped them out. Just saying. We also see kind of how people view Suletta. Things I didn't bring up about Suletta is that, one, people aren't really willing to assist her because they see her as an enemy of the Jaturk faction. And if that's the case, then we don't want to get on their bad side. The Earthians are kind of willing to help until Choo Choo, of course, tells them, no, she's from space, get out. And she's just kind of stuck with the other person who doesn't really have their own faction. And that would, of course, be Miorine. I don't know why she doesn't have her own faction. She probably just alienated herself from everyone else based on her personality, or bad luck of being the only person from your company who happens to be at this school. I don't know. They're not really clear on that. In addition to that, we also understand why Suletta has a white uniform. Apparently, that's the uniform of the bridegroom. So because she won, her uniform gets swapped back to white from blue. I kind of like the Back to the Future 2-esque clothing technology where your school uniform will just change colors based on your status. I don't know why. I just assumed they were two different uniforms. No, as it turns out, you can just kind of go boop, boop, boop. Your color changes. It is so dumb. I kind of love it. We also see kind of the bullying going on by the members of the Jaturk faction. And we also see a throwdown. Well, kind of a brief throwdown, but it's kind of nice seeing students kind of just get in each other's faces and have a, kind of smack each other around. I really like that. I like the idea of we are the elite and we can do whatever we want. And the poor kids basically going, oh yeah, you want to fight over that one? So I do like that. We're seeing the battle lines being drawn at the school, which obviously is going to be reflected later on in the show when Earth and space eventually go to war with each other, because it's a Gundam series. Earth and space are going to go to war with each other. Like I said before, I really, really liked this episode. And I'm really hoping the next one's good too. There's a lot of little threads they've been kind of just placing out there where I'm not entirely certain where this is going. And I'm really, really hoping we see a lot more of those threads kind of get a little stitched together rather than just a pile of, well, this character is over here and this character's over here and 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 here. No, let me a little, just make the tapestry, please, just a little bit. Then you can start adding in more threads. But I like the idea of kind of Suletta finding at least some mutual understanding with the Earthian faction, primarily because they're both kind of the lower ends. You know, Guel constantly refers to her as a bumpkin. It is more or less seen in Cradle Star and in other references in the show that there's not a lot of people on Mercury. And, you know, as said in Cradle Star, Suletta is the only child on Mercury. So she literally is the only person from her home world that could go to the school, period. And hearing Suletta talk about how she wants to build a school on Mercury, she wants to bring life back to Mercury, again, reflecting what was said in Cradle Star, I like seeing this connective tissue pulling things together, where you're seeing her state things that were said in a prequel, and you're seeing that stress and difficulty of trying to achieve that goal, as what Suletta faces this episode causes her to have a little crybaby moments, which again hurts her being a main character in my book. I might make jokes on certain mecha anime about man tears, but most of the times those characters are relatively competent, and it's that moment where something really bad happens. A character dies, they fail a mission of immense importance, and you see the tears. Usually when screwing up, your main character isn't really supposed to cry about that. That's one of the reasons people don't like Shinji Ikari. It's because they consider him like, oh, every time he makes a mistake, he just cries and mopes about it. And so again, I'm still not a fan of Suletta, but I really liked Choo Choo. I really like the Earthian faction, and I really think there's a lot of potential for story here. So hopefully it continues to be good. Hopefully I don't have to complain about the series too much, and I can just sit down and enjoy it for what it is. Let me know what you thought of this week's episode in the comments below. And until next time, I'll see you at the tavern.